welcome Sharmista Chatterjee for this podcast. This is a kind of a podcast where I was always waiting for. It's not she just being the 2 times GDE, or it's not like she being the 40 under the 40 data scientist. It's all about me demystifying the fact that I need to be a professional. Of course, you all need to be that right professional right at this point of time. So what I am is I'm just structuring all these podcasts and these content with different people, different professional backgrounds, and I'm just getting it to you so that you can demystify what this technology is all about. Trust me, there's no person apart from Sharmista ma'am who has really gone through a lot of hustle in her career, working in different firms. Being a 2 times GD is not something which is more easy, because you need to do a lot of community work. You need to figure out the times in which you can contribute to the community. I think this is going to be the podcast where everybody needs to listen in order to say that I just have 24 hours. I'm just going to make it more productive over the course of time. I think I'm deeply honored to have Sharmista ma'am in my podcast, because I've been in one of her session which we organized, the TF Everywhere, and I really loved it. So I just wanted to do a podcast with her. So I'm excited to do the podcast, and thank you so much for giving me the podcast.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Vishwa, for the warm introduction. I'm also excited for the session.
Yes,
yeah, let's get started.
Like, I would just love to ask more of your journey as a student. Like, how was the same Sharmista Chatterjee that we are seeing today as a student who is 20-year-old, 15-year-old, 25-year-old? How was your journey as a student?
Yeah, I did my graduation from West Bengal University and under Institute of Engineering and Management, which is one of the top 3 colleges in the state of West Bengal. And prior to that, I always had a bent of science, bent of mind. I was always interested in logic programming. That those days you didn't have computers in the school. We started computers at the class 7, and we were doing basics programming, logo programming. So I always liked it, and slowly it always encouraged me to look into new problems. How are the different diagrams? Logo you have like move command and all, right? Basics also, very simple type of stuff. I try to increase the level of difficulty and see that whether I am able to solve or what new problems can be solved. Then after passing my higher secondary, I was having not biology, I was having mathematics and statistics. I was curious to go into the statistics as a join as a BTech in statistician or in some in the bachelor's degree, but I didn't get the chance since I was like, because I got into engineering, everybody said go for engineering. So I started doing engineering in West Bengal University of Technology in the Institute of Engineering and Management. And I was always doing what was taught in the classes, the assignments very well, and also trying to do the projects and trying to think what better we can do it. So that's what I won't say I have built a car and I have built a robot. I have not done those things, yeah, honestly. So beyond whatever the project is assigned, what new features we can build, what else could be done, trying to see new problems, what we can solve. Then afterwards, when I graduated, I joined Wipro as a campus joining, right? So I worked for 3 years, and then I left and went for my master's from Helsinki University of Technology. And that changed, I think, my way of thinking and outlook quite a bit, because it was like more like a research oriented and like thinking new things and like more of application rather than what we study. So I was used to a different mode of studying when till my graduation, like mugging up notes. Even after doing projects, we have to mug up notes, but that was a completely different way of studying, like reading research paper, making what you understand, what else could be done, finding out, doing some POCs on the what are the new things that can be done. So that changed my outlook, and that created a solid foundation for me to move into data science, which was when I started, like after doing my master's, when I was looking to my master's thesis, was the completing the courses. So my thesis also involved quite a bit of machine learning, but that those days in 2008, it was never called machine learning. It was more of like how algorithms can work, what efficiency you are bringing in, how much time it is taking. And we didn't have simple libraries for k-means clustering. Even clustering code I had to write from scratch in C. say who is the nearest neighbor, compute the distance equilibrium. Every line of code has to be written from scratch. So doing that, I got some exposure. And then after, when I went back to India, I started investigating all those areas and then taking more at a greater height, right? So that time, in my organization, there were projects that involved MATLAB and Python, and data science was picking up in the industry. So think of 2014, 15, right? So that time also there were no explicit data science role available in the industry, but in research organizations, our organization, we were working with Princeton University professors. They were doing some kind of stuffs, and I never imagined that data science is going to pick up like this. But since I had an interest, I knew MATLAB and I had an interest, I was looking into and going deep into the problems, like what else things are there, looking into the finer aspects of it, what problems we can solve, why naive-Bayes algorithm, where we can use SVA, comparing the same problem, comparing them with different models, seeing what's the outcome. So trying out different steps, and then ultimately I moved slowly transitions into a completely data science role. When I was doing data science, going into the finer details, at that point of time, cloud was also quite known into the market. Cloud was not that nobody knows cloud. It was not like that. AWS has matured. 2015, if you can think of, AWS has matured, and I was working deeply into AWS. So I got to blend the two and start to use rather the machine learning models, deploy them in production in AWS, and see how it's working. What are the problems that we are facing when we are automating a machine learning pipeline? So if my pipeline fails, or my supervisor B is able to restart the model, that time we didn't have SageMaker or very sophisticated services. We can build the workflows with a drag and drop. We have to write our own REST-based API systems, and that machine learning models should be invoked from those services. So I gradually got my hands dirty and really learned like where is the problem and what we should ideally do to develop a very fast model that can run in production, and that has the minimum delay, fast or minimum delay. And what are the components that end-to-end components that the cloud may need? Like a cloud may need an ingestion system, a data processing system, and how the volume of data, how we can auto scale each of those components, each of the microservices. What are the security rules that we can offer at the entry points of these microservices? Then what failure and fault tolerance? If a service fail, how quickly I'm able to restart? What volume of data I'm losing? Is there any downtime in the system? If there is any downtime, how fast is my DNS reacting, right? So even if we are at load balancing our machine learning models across regions in the cloud, say from US East or US West, are we going to use the same DNS, or say US East and Frankfurt? So what DNS services do we need? If I write a own custom DNS, can it work across two different regions? And if in DNS services also, if you are writing a custom DNS, if you want to write authentication, if you want to add authentication, so how do we do that? So it was not just only machine learning, but getting hands dirty to put the models in production, identify the business use case, and see how the entire framework and the system works. And then looking from the microservices point of view, like getting the logs out of each of these microservices, then building the dashboards like the Stackdiver, whether you have Stackdiver or we have Datadog services. Okay, so and seeing them that when there is the load is at peak, how much is the delay for my machine learning model to respond at different times, how it is responding. Or if we do say load testing, say, right? So if is it my model is very robust or not? So doing the different types of tests, different types of component stacking, as well as building the pipelines, it gave a very good exposure that how it can work in production.
I really want to ask you that journey of your professional, and you conveyed it in a very cool fashion, because that's the amount of work that pre-Kubernetes era, pre-Docker era required, because that's the amount of complexity that cloud was. Like nobody had such a kind of a sophisticated material. Like Coursera has some courses, Udemy has some courses, but like there were very few digital content which was available for consumption. I think that would have been very hectic for you. But like, I would love to ask you this question based on your GDE journey, the 40 under 40 data scientist journey. How did it happen? Like, what was that hassle that you need to put in order to achieve something apart from your professional life? Like, people might think that it might not be of any use, but probably you are going to be a new individual after achieving something. So what's the thrill of getting that also? Like working, I know that you might have not worked for it. Probably all your hard work might have paid it, and here you are with a 2 times GD and a 40 and a 40 data scientist. But like, what's the thrill after getting that? Like, what's the actual pros and the cons of getting that also?
Yeah, so like I never aimed for being a GD. So it happened like I was in my maternity break in 2000, I guess 2019, right? Yeah. So that time from Google, they contacted me. I was actively blogging. The most important thing I was doing from 2017, I was 18, say, rather, I was actively blogging the new learning, say, election system sentiment analysis when the elections was about to start. I pulled all the data from Twitter and did a sentiment analysis, published some blogs in Medium. So I was actively blogging on my new learnings, apart from the things what I'm learning, IoT or different comparisons between cloud providers, what are the benefits. So once it happened, like I was in my maternity bag, Google directly contacted and asked me whether I would be interested with my to become a GD. I said, well, yes. And then they asked me to submit whatever I had done in my professional contributions, but that won't involve like you've published a paper or you filed a patent. That doesn't include that. So I thought that that would help me to get the GD at the first go because I had some papers and published patents, but it didn't. Like you have to have community contributions. So whatever I was having was only blogging, but I had a few like 30s 40s blogs written and that were very much hit. So, and I was also migrating to my own platform like takeairesearch.com, where I was putting my blogs, day to day updating the blogs from the Medium. And then when I applied, it was rejected saying that I don't have community talks. I have not participated in community talks. So that was a trigger point, and I thought, yes, I couldn't participate much in act as a speaker in conferences or in tech talks driven by communities. So why not take up this also? So I started doing that, and I got a lot of invites from different local communities. So first may not be a very big conference that you get invited, but maybe local communities were speaking up in Google groups. Yeah, that did help. Taking up sessions in the organization also did help. Yeah. So I was sharing my learning actively. And also I was active on LinkedIn, sharing the blogs, doing some GitHub, some utilities. You find out what's coming up new. So that time fairness was coming up. I took up that project like fairness, what we can do with new kind of data. How can we show that fairness works with different kinds of data and the accuracy varies based on the type of optimization that you use. Or think it like apart from fairness, a privacy. So differential privacy, right? What is there already in the internet, what people have not done or people might consider later. Say I took up sentiment analysis with differential privacy. So analyzing text data that was not available in the internet. So taking up some things that are not available, but the concept is well known, might help you to gain traction from the readers, or like increase your knowledge level as well as sharing with your readers, right? So that helped me also. And then when I had this POCs, small working examples built that enriched my GitHub profile. So my GitHub profile was also getting built, and those things I tried to put it in presentations, like add some more thoughts to it, like how it evolved, the concept evolved, what are the things that people have done in the industry, where all in different application domains it is getting used, and then followed by a working example of it. What are the pros and cons, what research is actively looking at, how it can be improved. So taking all these pieces, stitching together and building some presentation and going them and showing them in talks or sharing your thoughts in the community would definitely help. Means I did that. So that was the thing. Then again, Google contacted me 3 months down the line, and I applied like whatever, maybe I had 2 or 3 talks by then. Okay. So I applied, and then I cleared the interviews and I got selected for the first time, the machine learning GT. Then again, I think January this year, I applied for Google Cloud, and I was also, because I already had the Google Cloud certification done. So I knew the services and how they work in the machine learning, and already I've worked in AWS. And if you have a knowledge of at least one cloud system, that it helps you to relate the things. What are the services that AWS is using versus SageMaker is using versus Google is using? So it was very much a very smooth transition when I moved from AWS to Google Cloud. So I could relate the services, the components, and we can show prototypes. And as I had already a knowledge of it, I just applied and there was an interview, but I didn't prepare much about the separately for the Google Cloud interview. It just did happen, right? So that's how I got the second GD as well.
But the 40 under 40 data scientist, probably it's like one of the most desired positions that every data scientist needs. Like, how did that journey happen to you?
Yeah, so I never aimed for it. Means I had no idea there was a 40 under 40 under data scientist competition also running. So it was my manager who nominated me. I think I had, apart from like speaking in conferences or tech talks, I was also involved with my community, I think. And everywhere, like people used to organize some talks or they look for mentors. I volunteered for them. Like I tried to help people who are like not as much as proficient, and they're trying to gain proficiency, be it in data science, be it in cloud, or be it in technology, or even non-technology. People are stuck somewhere. So I was part of different groups like Lean, Lad and Lady. So they sometimes I did mentor people, and all this I think all this added, like I also published paper. And I think getting known among the community, getting known yourself, recognized in the community, it helped. So my manager nominated me. I'm thankful for that. Yeah, Abhishek. Yeah, he works also in Sapient. Yeah. So that's how it got selected, right? So it was it was also a surprise for me that I got selected, but thanks to it.
I'm like, of course, you told about Abhishek sir, who works in the Sapient with you. He's a colleague of yours. But like, I want to ask you this: like, how to build a sustained relationship with the people that we are working together with? Like, you can't be completely into I just want to improve. I just want to improve. If you have somebody, there are people who really nominate them. There are people who really push the people to just go and achieve something new. Like, there are people who really do that. Like, how to manage somebody as a colleague, like in a very, very precise fashion that, hey, like he's really good, let me just go and nominate him. Or else, like, how to build a community of like professionals who really want to help everybody with no selfless thought.
Yeah, I think the first thing is you have to find your passion. So what keeps you driving? What even if you're tired, you will do that, and you will achieve happiness in whatever little progress you make. Maybe sometimes it happens that you're not able to progress. The thing is complex. The libraries are not compatible. It's not working, and when you put it on the cloud, there are 100 different problems, right? So when you start with the cloud, and if you take just a VM, I don't think that there is a DevOps who will support you and do all the installations for you. But think like you have nothing and you're starting from scratch. You will face numerous hurdles and numerous obstacles. Many things won't work at all. So what is that? Is it that does it that keep you driving, or that do you want to see what happens at the end? Do you want to fix the problem till the end, or you're just tired? Oh, it's not working. It's not going to happen. It's not my piece of work, somebody else will do it. So being like open minded and having a passion, and like having a clear thought that whatever it takes, I will get this done. So that should be in the mind of the people. And when you try to help, like it may not be, the some of the problems may not be like coming directly from your domain or directly from the problems that you have faced, but can you relate those and give them some advice? Can you help them? Like honestly, can do you want to help them, and how can you help them? So that's how you can help the community. And whatever it may be, many times we think that, oh, this is a small thing I've done, what is there in sharing? But it's not like that. Maybe you have faced a problem, it's a simple thing, but somebody else may not will face a problem tomorrow. So why not share? So you can do many other things that can be possible. Share in Stack Overflow the problems you have faced, how to overcome those, right? So think of small way we can help. each other. And even sometimes it also happens like if you have a clear mind, like you're very busy, but somebody asks you, like they are stuck at a specific problem, email or LinkedIn. So try to help them if you know them, if you have a little time. Sometimes if there is an overflow and you have also day work, it's just overwhelming, we cannot. So in small possible way we can, I think that's going to make the difference.
Yeah, let me just go a little more technical. I think from now on, it's going to be more technical rather than being more professional and the comedians and things like that. Like, how have you seen the evolution of deep learning today? Like, how has it evolved over the course of time with reference to the techniques that we used to use before, like, I think probably 2015 or something? There are a lot of activation functions which have come up from 2015 itself, like lot of papers which came out with new activation function, new neural network architecture. How have you seen this deep learning as a field evolve over the course of time? Your experience, please.
Yeah, so deep learning, see, I honestly didn't work in 2015, and that time we were mostly using neural networks, and that was not like simple neural networks, not like deep learning models that we use today. Neither we have like a huge capacity to bear the cost. I was working in a startup, so that we will train and huge deep learning models. So I think it very good evolved around late of 2018 to 19, and people started using, and mostly it started, and the use I find application is with NLP systems like sentiment analysis, text processing, right? So most of the people, even startups and organizations, started adapting to it. Then comes like time series prediction. So if you have huge volumes of data and the multivariate features, like, so where how your simple arima isn't working anymore, and that's the best place that you have multiple features. Your Varmax or Sarmax is also failing, and you may have seasonality, may not have. You don't know what is there inside the data. What are the patterns that you are going to get discovered after at the end of the when you finish the training? So that's where I see that deep learning things came up, and it rose quite high and got like well adapted within the organizations or even the startups. But computer vision again remains a challenge, right? That to the way it is getting adopted, because these neural networks are very complex, and you have to have a prevent model. And that is also, if you want, you can go ahead and use ResNet or other architectures that are available, be ResNet or V15, some of these models which are available already. But if you are like thinking of that, you are building a custom solution, you are going to use say medical or biological fields, you are going to train with your own cells a very large deep learning model. You have thousands and thousands of images. So that needs the infrastructure as well as the cost of running them in GPUs. So you build your model, then you can apply transfer learning. So that place is still growing, I think, and there is a much to be seen that how well efficiently we can apply deep learning. Many of the big giants or the forerunners, I would say, in deep learning, of course, Google, Microsoft, and whoever you can think of, the forerunners, AWS or the big data science companies, they have done it. But what about small people, small organizations or startups? So if they want to, today I want to build a deep learning model based on like coronavirus, what kind of different virus images I can stack it from different variants of the virus. So I should have the infrastructure to train all those viruses. I should have the things that I should get the data from everybody. So it's more not of a single deep learning thing, but if I am doing something very sophisticated, I should have the cross collaboration across industries to get the data out of it, and then of course apply my infrastructure to train those models.
Yeah, because why I ask this question is because probably you have seen startup, you have seen other life wherein different companies approach problems in different ways. Like, we talk about Lean Sigma 6, like Six Sigma, sorry, the Six Sigma, Lean, and all these techniques, like they have evolved over the course of time. Of course, you have seen that startup hustle and the way in which the mindset of a startup entrepreneur and people within the startup also works. But like, I specifically want to ask you this question, like how to approach any problem statement, like let it be like a personal problem statement that I'm trying to solve, or else like anything related to the deep learning, how to approach it, be done and dusted with that problem statement, and how to approach a new problem statement in the future also.
Yeah, so if you see, look at the point of the problem statement, I've seen freshers and youngsters will jump at solving the problem, right? So I would say rather, like if it is a little, if it is a simple thing, sentiment analysis, you will go ahead and do it, right? But if it is a complex problem, first of all, we have to think that what value are we going to add when we develop the model? Even if the accuracy is less, can we give some value, some insights from the data? So think about the worst situation, your accuracy is going to get a hit, but still can people rely on your model? On what basis? So taking the problem statement, I would say look around solutions that people have done it. You're not the, maybe you're not reinventing the wheel. You are not reinventing the wheel. So look around solutions that people have already built through, specifically in data science. You need to read research papers. You should have the habit of reading research papers, trying out the POCs which are available. Like if you have read a paper, you have some data sets, there's GitHub, they have given the code. Try to build the code and see what it is exactly doing, what they're saying they're doing, how they're doing. Now when you integrate and merge the knowledge with same topic with some other people who have done it, some other research paper, then think of how you can merge it, or what is, how you can adapt it based on your problem. What are the problem that you are solving and how you can apply that, more of our application point of view. So people who are in AI research or AI scientists doing PhDs, they have a different sort of way of looking at a problem. They will try to solve a problem in, like a BERT model or transformer, like a GPT model. These are getting evolved, models are getting evolved, right? So these organizations who are into research of data science, they have the constantly the job of looking and evolving that weak mechanism of solving that problem, like new architecture, new models, new way of looking at the problem. But for us who are more on the application side of it, so how well can we use the thing what are already being developed or given by the open source community? And in doing so, maybe you will end up in doing some new things. Like even if you have the open source thing, you are doing something in your, for your use case, that is something new. You write a total new utility function, because your data has to be processed in that way that will go through the model. Or you write something about unique about a pre-processing, or something ensembling, you do something that is new. So make those contributions available to the community, contribute back to the open source, and write a blog on it, that this can be done. Sometimes for freshers or young people like who are budding data scientists or who are becoming experts, participate in Kaggle competitions, right? And when you participate in Kaggle competitions, I'm sure you will know a lot of things, that where do you stand, right? And check the notebooks, how well you can do that, how well you can structure your code. Most importantly, with just data science, even if I take interviews, I see people think data science like 3 lines of code, like take the data, fit it, train it, and that your accuracy is done. But it's not that. How do you write a well structured code even in data science? How do you make your notebook readable to the people? So these all points, it has to be there in your mind. And when you look at different, somebody may have interest in, say, now things have changed, right? Somebody may have interest in trying to find out the vaccination trend, or somebody may have an interest in doing different types of coronavirus problems. So see what has been done and think of something which is a bit new. Maybe you're not reinventing or writing a new research paper, but think of new. How can, even in Kaggle, you can contribute by building, by providing support to the data science community by contributing data sets. Can you contribute to data sets? Can you contribute to discussions? It's not always that you have to win a Kaggle competition. You have to participate in a Kaggle competition. So these are other finer aspects that needs to be learned and well invite, and like you should, it should be there in your blood and in your cells. Like it's not that we are doing just somehow running the model and we have got some accuracy, we are super happy. But maintaining as like a proper structure, the code, helping others to, that anybody should be reading your notebook, should be able to understand what you are doing. No why question. So following that, I think that helps us to grow, and I think we also help the community.
Yeah, I know. I want to ask that question regarding the community itself. Like, how satisfied are you being a guest speaker, being a mentor to some of the people in the community? Like, of course, you have been an author, you have been you also have your own podcast also. So how has this contribution really given you that satisfaction that I'm a data scientist who is satisfied from the soul, like I'm teaching somebody something, I'm also learning in the same way. And also, like, what's the thrill of actually teaching some new concepts to any person out there for the world tomorrow?
Yeah, chill, I would say your passion should drive you, right? Nobody should come and tell you, but like you should know that what you like, and if you based on your passion, if you can seek somebody's mentorship that I'm liking this, well, how can I do some guidance, or the initial, like sometimes we do need an initial boost, then have some mentors who can guide you, right? And talk with people in the community, have a good network, and who can refer you in different events. And also you need to be active, like if you want to speak in conferences, what are the conferences that are going on, and that should come. I think the most important thing is the passion that should keep you driving. So these things will automatically follow once you know that you want to do this and you want to achieve this, and you want to like show something new to the world.
Yeah, but like, let's just go back to the compute platforms which you were saying. Like, of course, you were working on Logo, you were working on some actually not that kind of a language which we still use, or not kind of a techniques which we use for learning today. Of course, code.org is something which children might learn, but yeah. No, let's just go back to the compute platform. What do you feel about the compute platform that is coming up and emerging today? Like we see GPUs, TPUs running out of lot of, like, we just want to just connect the bandwidth, like you just connect it through an internet, you get the TPU, you get the GPU in a Google Colab, or the Kaggle notebooks are available. But like, let's just also talk about the edge also. Like, what's the evolution of the compute platform that you have seen through your career, through your academic journey, and through everything that you have seen, how this compute platform has evolved?
Yeah, so the journey, like it's like we know that we didn't have GPUs and TPUs available previously, right? We have to rely on our servers, like how much capacity the servers were. And sometimes I know I came across some organizations where we was working, so this Baba and all the or the DRDO, which I have, they have supercomputers, so people will be running the stuffs on supercomputer. It's not as much was there on the cloud. Now it's very easy for us to deploy models, and once we do that, we can see the results ourselves sitting at home. But what I think is what the major adapters are planning to do by 2030, like the sustainability part of it, as we know that deep learning models and these TPUs are emitting a lot of, having a lot of carbon emissions, right? So add, so before, and let's not jump into deep learning from day one. If it is needed, of course it is needed, but it can be solve the problem using traditional learning. So, and how much volume of data is there that we think of deep learning? And if we think of deep learning, then we have to know the cloud very well. We have to pick up data centers that has the least carbon emissions. So Microsoft, I think, has come up with data centers as Sweden. Google is also working. So get familiarized with the cloud providers, see what's the best that you can do for the environment, for considering the sustainability part of it, right? So these climate changes and other bad things for the what we are doing for the mother earth, we can prevent those. So our we have seen, right, the news is coming up, and so many, so each deep learning model emits how much of carbon. Maybe that's not even emitted by cars running on the streets, right? So is it really worth it that we do the deep learning model? And if so, then what's the best data center that we can pick based on the location I am sitting? Maybe can we pick an Arctic data center that Google's and other cloud providers will be trying to look at? So for the best cooling part of it, where they can deploy a data center. So we have to know those both hand in hand, machine learning and well as the like the processing capability of it. So how much power it is taking to run a single unit of the line of the code, or the latency. If we can, there are faster ways of doing it. Can we do it? Is pre-processing my model or doing some kind of a compression is going to help that. From IoT standpoint, so devices are very power hungry, right? They quickly run out of battery. So are there any renewable energy sources that can supply them with the energy so that they can run the deep learning models? So ambient sources, other sources, can we do that? So it's like based on what are things available and how we can build a sustainable environment around us. It all depends on this. So how we can leverage those. It's ultimately how we can leverage those. Therefore, that we have to keep ourselves constantly updated and read our stuffs and experiment some of this. We should have the right environment to coordinate and with people. So build such stuffs.
Yeah, last question about the way in which you are conducting your podcast, the way in which you're writing the blogs. Ma'am, I just want to ask you this one question, like, how did you start with this podcast and things like that? And how do you manage time? Because time management is something which every data scientist needs today. I think because we are all busy with our own journey of like, we need to do this, we need to do that. How to manage time? That's it. Last question.
Yeah, I think it depends. Again, I would say the same, coming back to the same thing. If you want to do and you have a passion to do, you will find some time of it. And understand there could be pressure from other situations, like the COVID has created a lot of pressure on us, right? So we don't have time and we can't manage. Our near ones are getting ill. It's very difficult to manage with time. So then there are phases of life where we need to slow down, and there will be phases when you have time. So when you get time, try to leverage it. It may be we are not getting the maximum time right now for last 1 year or something. Very difficult, maybe, right? So then leave it. Just don't take too much tension. So sometime your time will also come. That time you leverage that. When you get time, you are in best of mind. You got a new job. Leverage it. Do something out of your office work. Try to learn something new. Build something new. Experiment. That's what I would say. And I started the podcast because I also wanted to connect with people like the way you are doing, and see something new if I can learn from other people. So many people are doing a lot of in their respective domains, right? People are experts in their domains. I may not have that knowledge. How do I get those knowledge?
Thank you so much for this wonderful podcast, because I know there might be a lot of technical constraint today, but I really enjoy the podcast. Like, of course, we had a lot of other things, like we had to delay the podcast for a while and things like that, but I really enjoy the podcast today. Thank you so much, ma'am, for this amazing podcast.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your time. Bye bye.